if you're detained, your attorney could apply for a bond redetermination hearing with the immigration judge. And then the judge will determine, are you a flight risk? In other words, do you have like a family? Do you have ties to this area? Do you have a steady job? What are the chances that you're gonna run if we let you go? The purpose of today's video is talk about a disastrous decision that came out on September 5th that really affects immigration policy throughout the United States. There was a Board of Immigration Appeals case referred to as Matter of Yahure Hurtado. And this decision basically says that immigration judges no longer have the power to grant bond for immigrants who entered the United States without inspection. So just a brief history on this. When you are placed into removal proceedings, there are two possible ways that you could continue with your removal proceedings. One is in the non-detained docket, which is where the majority of immigrants show up to court. You're free, you have a court date, you have to show up. If you don't show up, you get a removal order, and now ICE has to enforce that removal order by detaining you and removing you. Or sometimes when people get a removal order, they voluntarily leave, which is what you're also supposed to do. But the other way that you can be in removal proceedings is in detained removal proceedings. And people are typically only detained if they are like a flight risk or a danger to the community, or they're subject to mandatory detention, which there are several provisions. One of the most common ones is if you've been convicted of an aggravated felony, like a really serious crime, you'd be subject to mandatory detention. And what that means is you don't have a right to be released on bond. You can't ask the judge to determine a dollar amount for you to pay in exchange for you being released. And that dollar amount is supposed to guarantee that you go back to court. So for example, if you're detained, your attorney could apply for a bond redetermination hearing with the immigration judge. And then the judge will determine, are you a flight risk? In other words, do you have like a family? Do you have ties to this area? Do you have a steady job? What are the chances that you're gonna run if we let you go? And two, are you a danger to the community? Do you have any criminal history? Have you ever gotten any DUIs, any substance abuse issues, any violence, any criminal history whatsoever, or even police reports if there's no conviction? Those can be considered by the immigration judge as well. And then the judge might say like, well, you have a family, you've been here for like 15 years, you have no criminal history. I'm gonna set a bond of $5,000. You pay that $5,000, we will release you from detention, and then we'll transfer your case to the non-detained immigration court docket, where you can continue fighting your removal proceedings to see if you're granted relief from deportation. Maybe you're applying for asylum, maybe you're applying for adjustment of status if you qualify. It's very fact specific. Now, immigration judges no longer have the power to grant bond for someone who's entered the United States without inspection, which is crazy. Nothing like this has ever happened before in the last like 60 plus years under some version of the current Immigration and Nationality Act. There has never been an interpretation of the Immigration and Nationality Act where the courts determined that if you entered the US without inspection, you're not eligible for bond. This is a novel, a very new reading of the Immigration and Nationality Act. A few months ago, the Trump administration was urging ICE attorneys, the deportation attorneys, to argue that immigrants are not eligible for bond if they entered without inspection. Judges have been very hesitant to do that because that was a drastic departure from past precedent. It had never been interpreted that way before. And then judges on a case-by-case basis, some judges were approving the government's requests, some were denying it. The Trump administration told them that they should consider it. But now that there's a BIA precedent decision that the Trump administration basically manufactured, now the immigration judges are nationwide bound by this decision. And so if you're detained and you entered without inspection, at least for now, immigration judges do not have the power to release you on bond, even if they really want to. I do expect this case to get appealed, but at least for the next few months, this is probably going to be the policy that all immigration judges are going to need to follow. And I only hope that some nonprofit organization or like ACLU challenges this in some of the higher federal courts. For those who are detained, you might still have remedies where you could be released under a habeas petition. So that is still possible. Those are under federal constitutional arguments. Like for example, your right to not be arbitrarily detained for too long. Typically speaking, for example, if someone's been detained for more than a few months and the removal proceedings aren't anticipated to conclude in the very near future, you might be eligible for release under a habeas petition. My office doesn't handle habeas petitions, but I actually spoke to an attorney who handles those right before I made this video to verify that that is still a remedy. And he actually focuses on detained cases, and he said that's probably going to be their number one remedy now, instead of trying to get a bond determination hearing, which is what he previously focused his practice on. The practical implications of this are somewhat staggering. I mean, I think by some estimates, half of the people who are unlawfully present in the US entered without inspection. So the other half presumably entered on some sort of visa and then overstayed. So that's a crazy number of immigrants who would be subject to mandatory detention. There certainly is not enough housing in detention facilities for all of these people. So the Trump administration is using their unlimited funding now to pretty much just build as many detention facilities and convert as many facilities into detention facilities as possible. It's really going to change the way the immigration landscape works. And now, practically speaking, I had a client who had to show up in person to a hearing today, and this decision just went into effect like a week ago. I was genuinely worried, like, is this person going to get detained? Because if they do get detained when they show up to court, we have no way to have them released under the current laws and policies and this BIA precedent decision that just went into effect. So I was truly terrified. The good thing is they showed up to court and then they just got a new court date, no problems with ICE. So we dodged a bullet this time, but it's gonna only be a matter of time before some of my non-detained clients show up to court, get detained, and then get transferred to the detained docket, because the immigration judge no longer has the power to release them if they entered without inspection. All right, guys, that brings us to the end of today's video. If you yourself need to speak to an immigration attorney about any family-based immigration issue, I focus on family-based green cards, like marriage-based green cards, petitioning for parents, kids. I also focus on naturalization and becoming a US citizen, and consular processing. If you have family members abroad and you want to petition for them to enter the US legally, we handle those cases as well. If you need any guidance on removal proceedings, you've received an NTA and you don't know how to navigate it, I could also speak to you and advise you on those issues. So if you want to speak to me, my name is Puyan Darian. I'm an immigration attorney with an office in New York. I handle these cases nationwide throughout the entire United States, and you can find my information to schedule a consultation in the video description below. If you're new to my channel, I try to put out several videos each week advising you on changes to immigration policy, and I'll see you guys next time for another video.